You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello everybody, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Nationals podcast. Today it is November 17th, 2021, and on today's show we're discussing some news that Ryan Zimmerman shared with the Sports Junkies in DC, a potential look into maybe if he's coming back next year. Also some news on Justin Verlander, where he might land, and then a look at three Nationals relievers from this year, Mason Thompson, Tanner Rainey, and Patrick Murphy, and where they might fit in. Three guys who are going to be back in DC next year and what their impacts could be. Three very different situations. So let's get into that on today's show. All right, let's get into it here. Locked On Nationals podcast. So first piece of news comes to us from the Sports Junkies at 106.7 The Fan in Washington, D.C. This morning, they had Ryan Zimmerman on the show. Obviously, Nationals first baseman, designated hitter, at one point third baseman as well. And he said that, quote, "I am planning on playing next season," end quote. It says no decision has been made, but right now he is proceeding like he is going to play, is what it sounds like. He also said he's relaxing right now, so kind of a little bit of, not one foot in the door, one foot out the door, but just kind of enjoying family life at this point in time. Obviously, another child on the way for him as well. So that's a factor in all of this. But he did mention the CBA by name and said, I haven't been paying a ton of attention to it, but obviously those discussions are going to start really ramping up. And I think that's going to be a good barometer of kind of where he is, with all of this. If there is going to be a stoppage next season, they're going to have to wait. I don't really know if Ryan Zimmerman's going to want to wait around, for that to happen, and just kind of might say, all right, for the time being, I'm out. I'm not in the game anymore. But we'll have to see, obviously. But this is not. I guess I can use the word surprising, right? Like if you listen to this podcast, I know everybody's, some podcast, everybody's first, but heard this podcast. I've been a bit skeptical that Ryan would come back. I think it's a situation where, to me, it felt like a goodbye with the tears and his family being there, and that entire, kind of just a beautiful celebration that they had for Ryan. Obviously, the guy is a tremendous competitor and somebody who wants to win and wants to help this team. And look, he might be as much value to this team right now, this coming season, than he was in the 2019 World Championship season. Here's what I mean by that. There are so many good, potentially good, young players on this team that he could really benefit. Guys like your Carter Kiebooms, guys like your Luis Garcias, right? Those kinds of players in the infield, that he can interact with on a day-to-day basis, talk to about the game, and it goes beyond him. Even guys like Cabrera Ruiz and guys like Lane Thomas. I mean, having a vet like that is somebody everyone can lean on, especially those young guys trying to find their footing right now and trying to figure out if they're going to be a part of a Washington core moving forward as they begin this rebuild, this restacking, hopefully, for the Nationals towards what is they want to be a winning team again. Ryan can be a essential part of that if he wants to be, in the form of not just a player that is a good performer. And I thought he said it, in the role I was given, I think I did as well as possible. And Mike Rizzo agrees. I think also Dave Martinez would agree as well. He did about as well as you could in that kind of pinch hitting platoon role alongside Josh Bell. And the reps went down just a little bit as Josh's play kind of rose, his level of play rose throughout the season. So, and I think he did an excellent job in that. And obviously, we've mentioned it several times before on this podcast, a player that can play still at the major league level at 37 years old. There's no reason he can't go and kind of produce next season. So he says there's no decision yet either way, but did say he is treating it, I guess, leaning towards playing. He's treating this offseason like he is going to be a professional baseball player. And obviously it's November. His team was not in the playoffs, but that probably means, he's relaxing some. still getting that cage work in there, still keeping himself in relative shape. Sometimes you can come in there in February and get yourself back into shape, but Ryan's a consummate pro. So, keeping himself in shape, keeping himself ready to go. Sounds like Zim at this point in time is leaning towards playing. Now, what that means, what that looks like, we're going to have to see. All right, quick break here. On the other side, we'll have some more news for you all, and then we'll head into some more of our player interviews and quote-unquote exit interviews. Not actually interviewing the players, but kind of talking about them, what their seasons were like, and whether they'll be back with the team next year and what that role might be. More bullpen guys. We're going to finish up the pen today as we move forward with this series. But first, a word from our sponsors here on the Locked On Nationals podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting, best for you protein bar in the game today. You go to built.com. That's built.com. You can check out all of the available flavors right now, of which there are many, and there usually is, my friends, something for everybody. And I love Thanksgiving. I'm sure all of you all do as well. But pie and things of that nature, a little heavy on the calorie side. So, if it's the next day afterwards and you want a tasty treat, but also kind of want to function, maybe go for a run, Built Bar. That's what we got for you. Built Bars, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and plenty of protein. So you can eat that treat. You can feel good about it. You can also go on with your day and do some productive things, work out, not feel like you got to be a couch potato. You want to be a couch potato? Go ahead. Enjoy a Built Bar being a couch potato. But really, Built Bars are tasty. They can be a dessert. They can be something you use pre or post-workout. So go check them out at built.com. That's built.com. Promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED 15 LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com today. All right, one other quick piece of baseball news here as we move through the show. Justin Verlander sounds like he's kind of narrowing his market. There's been some information out there from John Heyman, who says that Verlander has both a 1-year offer and a multi-year offer on the table. Mentioned the Jays as well as other options are interested. Also, something was mentioned, I believe, by John Heyman about a warm, kind of a warm area place, right? He says the Yankees are involved, and he means for the preseason, I should say. Here's a tweet. It says the impression out there is Verlander might prefer a team that trains in Florida and perhaps on one of the East Coasts of Florida because he has a home there in Florida. That's what's talked about by Joel Sherman, and then obviously Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic. You guys are familiar with his work as well. So Yankees are an option, and there's expected to be a decision here pretty soon. I've talked about this. I'm skeptical on a 2-year offer. I wouldn't give that to Verlander just because I know his age. Would you want a guy paying him $20 million coming off an injury at the age of 40? I know how good he was in 2019, but at some point, Father Time steps to meet us all. In the sporting world, it usually comes quicker and it can come fast. And so I know he looked good in that showcase that he had, but that's not a guarantee that he's going to be anywhere near the Justin Verlander that we've come to know and expect. So that's really, one of the big pitchers on the market. So keep your eyes peeled on that. Looks like we could have some resolution on this by the end of the week, and we'll obviously see what happens next week in Thanksgiving week if we do get some more deals being made, if things slow down, what kind of things look like as we head towards that December 1st freeze date, I guess is the good term to use right now. All right, we'll get to those player exit interviews as we call them, but right after this, one more quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at betonline.ag. They're back. They're better than ever with a new web interface. The start of basketball season, more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus upon your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON, locked on, and get that 50% deposit bonus. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, today we're going to finish our exit interviews, as we've been calling them, with some of the bullpen arms for the Nationals. And the first guy we're going to talk about is Mason Thompson. There's so much excitement around this young guy, and he comes over in that trade that sent Daniel Hudson over to the San Diego Padres, and that sent Mason Thompson, the 23-year-old, back to DC. 6'7", 223. We got a great look at him this year. Thrust into some spots that really, probably was not that accustomed to, but did make 27 appearances for the Nats this season. Had some really great stretches. Had that month of August where he had 3.18 ERA, 4.35 in September, but really had a stretch there where it was, I believe it was roughly 10 games consecutively where he did not allow an earned run. And that was a stretch there that he was really impressive. The strikeout numbers weren't super high, but he was not giving up runs, even though the sample size is rather small, third inning, sometimes be 2/3 of an inning or a full inning. But they're just trying to get this guy acclimated. And we know with Mason Thompson, for him, the real question is going to be about that pitch arsenal. Now, he's just 23 years old at this point in time, but that pitch arsenal is something that we know has to develop moving forward for him if he's going to be a potentially top-line reliever, which I think we all know the Nats really hope he can be, or at least a very effective major league reliever. And for him, we know that the primary pitch is that sinker, right? It's a pitch that he is going to use a majority of the time, right? We saw it so much this season that he really relied on that sinker pitch to the tune of 81%. That slider followed up at 13.7, the four-seamer at 4, and the changeup he threw just 5 times all season. The four-seamer he threw just 17 times. He got a really good whiff percentage, about 68% on that slider. It's a really good pitch, but I think that's a lot of the time coming from the fact that he throws so many hard sinkers, right? That's kind of his game, is that hard sinker. But look, he got 9 Ks off the slider this year as opposed to 14 with that sinker ball. And he used the slider 58 times compared to 344 on that sinker. So a much smaller usage rate, nearly by 300 pitches. And the strikeouts that he got with him was just 5 less. Goes to show you what an effective pitch that is. Want to see more of that moving forward. Want to see what that third pitch becomes in the offseason. So important for him to develop potentially a third pitch for him to be really effective. Now, a reliever can normally get away with 2, and he was pretty effective with 2, right? He was very effective with 2, but if he can kind of move up the ranks at 24, develop that third pitch as a relief guy, boy, the Nationals will be in awesome position with Mason Thompson. I think they want him to be a guy that they're going to rely on heavily towards the back, maybe an 8th inning guy, right? Maybe you go Finnegan 7, Thompson 8, or you flip that around. We'll see what Tanner Rainey, if he's going to figure into this situation as we move forward on that. But this is a guy I think they want to prime for that back part of the bullpen. They're going to have a great chance to do it this year. Had a strong year coming over. They were dead set, the Nationals were, on getting these boys some run. The new guys that came in, they were going to get those fellas some run. And this is a guy that got some run, and I think was one of the more impressive guys. I know there was so much said about Riley Adams and Lane Thomas, and obviously a lot of excitement around a top-line prospect like a Josiah Gray. But Mason Thompson, in a position of need for the Nationals, could be a guy they don't have to go out and acquire. They could have an option for one of those late innings in their own system already. And that's a great place to be because we know how important those guys are. The Nationals lacked a lot of those great guys. They had a couple in the back end in that World Series, obviously, but I had to go to a guy like Corbin in certain spots. Well, hopefully next time the Nats make a run, they won't have to because they've got guys like Mason Thompson around and Kyle Finnegan around and whoever's going to end up being that closer. They've got those guys around to be a part of that back-end strategy. All right, the next guy has drawn the ire of a lot of Nats fans. He's a pretty fascinating case, and that would be Tanner Rainey, all right? This is a guy for the Nats that I know so many people have strong feelings about. And you think about what he gave to the Nats, a couple of years ago and what that, the expectation was for him moving forward. He didn't meet that, right? He's not a guy who met a lot of the expectations that we had for him going into last year in the 38 appearances and 31 innings, 31 2/3 innings that he pitched. He's going to be 29 next season. But this year for him, in his third year in DC, followed up a year we made 20 appearances and at a 2.66 ERA. In the year he had 38 appearances and a 7.39. And the guy that had to go down to AAA, right? This guy had to go down there to try and find himself, to try and find his stuff again. 6.48 ERA in the first month that he pitched this year, 12.60 in May and June is a 4.76, but in July, just one appearance and then got shelled. August, same thing. Comes back in September and in 4 2/3 innings pitches and 1.93 ERA. In the 5 appearances that he made, only one time did he give up a run. And then also, he had a rough outing, though, his last one in October. So it was such a mixed bag from him. And it's a guy that's a 2-pitch guy and just could not find it all year. Numbers for him, looking at kind of the inside stuff, there wasn't really much of a jump. There's nothing noticeable about the jump from the previous year to this year. Kind of looking at stuff, and there's one stat I'm going to give you guys here in a second that was a jump. But predominantly, the stuff kind of looked the same, right? Guys in 2020 had a really difficult time hitting that slider. That was a very effective pitch for him. The batting average on that was a .50. Expected batting average was a .079, and I mean .05 for the actual batting average. .079 for the actual batting average. The one thing that did uptick, 2020, teams hit 149 off his fastball. In 2021, 253. That fastball was a much more hittable pitch this past season than it was in the past. Spin rate didn't really drop. It dropped marginally off that pitch, but still, there really wasn't a whole lot other going on other than teams just started seeing that fastball better. The placement wasn't as good. The put-away percentage back in 2020, 34.8. This year, 15.3. So the pitch itself feels like didn't really change that much, but the amount of swings and misses he was getting and location of the pitch, it feels like just wasn't always good. He wasn't always on. He wasn't always as refined as he needed to be. So guys under contract next year, he's going to get a chance because of the quality that he has shown at times. He's going to get that opportunity to go out there and prove himself again, right? That is going to be, I think, an opportunity he's afforded in spring training. But I think with the Nationals' slim, kind of bullpen situation, it's a guy that at 28, 29 years old, you've got to give at least one more look to. You've got to give another chance to a guy who for you in a Nationals uniform can be effective. He was effective during the 2019 season as well, right? It's a guy that was a part of that World Series championship winning team. A guy that was not excellent, wasn't this some all-star type caliber guy, but in 52 appearances, 3.91 ERA on that season. So a guy obviously that was effective in that World Series run. So I think there's a good chance that they give him another shot. Where that is in the bullpen, I think they'll start low leverage and work their way up. But I think it's a guy, it's going to be somebody they're with the way things are in that bullpen, you've got to give him another chance, right? 2-pitch guy. Maybe he's a guy who thinks about it in the offseason, tries to develop a third pitch. We'll see. But he's been fastball slider forever. So let's see what he can come back with next year. Last guy we're going to bring up today is Patrick Murphy, somebody that I actually think Nationals fans are relatively excited about, but has not necessarily performed great. So last year, they get him in the trade, they said Brad Hand over to Toronto. And they end up getting Patrick Murphy as a part of this deal. Now for him, he comes in and he has a 5.30 ERA in 17 appearances. Wasn't much better in Toronto, but is somebody that I think because of his pitch matching, his pitch mix, and also the his age, just 26. It's a guy who's 6'4", 220. It's a big guy who throws a variety of pitches that they've got under team control. Sinker a third of the time, curveball a third of the time, basically fastball a third of the time. That's really the split. It's essentially even. Sinker is at 33.3%, just a bit higher than the curveball. It's at 32.9%. And then the four-seamer at 32.3%. change up at 1.4. So not really much of a factor, but he will use it occasionally. So 3 pitches, I think that gives you, a good look. It's got you, give you different looks, right? That's something that we talk about with a lot of these relievers, right? It's something I've mentioned with a lot of these guys is, hey, can you give dudes different looks? The problem is that teams have been very effective hitting 2 of these 3 pitches. The fastball and the curveball were pretty easy to hit this season. Teams hit 308, opposing batters hit 308 off that curveball. Off the 4-seam fastball, they hit 273. Sinkers to 225, but the expected batting average off of it was 328. Right, so it's not very good, even though that's actually got some of the best results. We'll have to see what happens with him, though. But I think people are excited because they've got him under team control, and this may be a guy who can turn it around. And sometimes a change of location, sometimes a full off season can get that comfort level up. So what I think it's really something to watch is Patrick Murphy. What's he look like in spring training? And I think that will give us an indication of what kind of guy he potentially might end up being. And also worth noting, a lot better against lefties than he was against righties. Lefties hit 235 against him with a 316 on base, 373 slugging, and a 688 OPS. Right-handers hit 302 off him, 380 on base. So, not bad against those lefties. Let's see if we can get those numbers trending in the right direction for him. It's going to be a lot more consistency there. Let's see. A guy that's definitely someone to watch in spring training. All right, that will do it. We'll wrap up bullpen guys and start on starters in the next show. We're going to talk our next couple shows. We're going to talk with Dan Wilson of Locked On Phillies tomorrow. Talk about the National League East race and what it looks like for these teams trying to catch up with the Braves and kind of what the windows might be for these other teams in the division. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at @LO_Nationals. You can follow me at @JoshNeighbors_. Till next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.